Breaking tonight, President Trump is in New York City this evening to help the RNC raise some money. He is speaking behind closed doors with supporters there in the Big Apple, and it comes after a busy and a frustrating day for him here in Washington as the final nail in the coffin was put in repealing and replacing Obamacare. Promised for 7 years, the Senate GOP announced that they were going to vote. Last week they said, we're going to vote next week, but now not going to vote this week, and they will miss that September 30th deadline. Also today, President Trump met in the White House with bipartisan members of the House Ways and Means Committee. They are the folks that are hammering out the tax cut, the tax reform plan, which is going to be announced tomorrow morning in Indiana.
It's time for both parties to come together and do what is right for the American people and the nation that we all love.
Joining me now, counselor to the president, Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, thanks for being here on the rooftop.
Thank you, Mark.
Always good to see you.
How
frustrated is the president about what happened with health care?
Well, we're very disappointed that the senators who made a promise to their constituents to repeal and replace Obamacare, and in fact, in many cases, voted to repeal and replace Obamacare, have failed to make good on that promise. This would have been the beginning of the end of Obamacare, and it really would have helped the millions of Americans, Martha, who don't have health insurance, who were lied to that they can keep their plan, keep their doctor, who have seen their premiums spiral out of control. In the state of Alaska, premiums have gone up by more than 200%, Arizona by more than 120%. So the data are there, and there are millions of Americans who have been relying upon this Congress to make good on their own promises. Over 7 or 8 years, we've been there 7 or 8 months. So this president remains optimistic that Obamacare can be repealed and replaced with something better and more fairer to the consumer and to a free market system. But as Senator Graham of South Carolina said today, there are 50 votes that agree with the substance, just not 50 votes that agree with the process.
What happened with Ted Cruz and Rand Paul? And the president referred today to so-called Republicans. I mean, does he want Collins, for example, to be replaced in Maine? I mean, you know, are they Republicans? I guess becomes a real question. And what do you make of Ted Cruz and Rand Paul's defections?
Well, we see that these senators all ran successfully. If they are right there behind us, Martha, they ran successfully on repealing and replacing Obamacare. They're going to have to go home and explain to their constituents why this wasn't good enough. And that's going to be difficult for many of the people who just can't get health care and health insurance. Some people had the worst possible outcomes. They got the insurance card. They were told you're now, quote, covered. Right. And yet they couldn't access it because the premiums were so prohibitively expensive. What Graham Cassidy would have done is block grant the Medicaid money to the states so that the governors and those closest to the people in need can get that money closer to the patients in need. And it also would have allowed you to use health savings accounts, which is a tremendous free market tool.
An idea that's been around for
to help pay for those premiums. So they're going to need to explain to their constituents why they weren't there. But this president remains ready. He is not giving up on repealing and replacing Obamacare. The other thing is 2018 is a very curious year. People focus on the elections that are happening. Something else is happening in 2018. Obamacare gets worse. There's a whole new tax. The premiums are set to skyrocket even more. And so there will be much more explaining to do for those who were not here for this vote.
All right, let's talk about tax reform. Is Mitch McConnell the person to get tax reform through? Does the president still have confidence in him?
We hope that the leader of the Republican Party, indeed the majority leader of the Senate, who I just saw about an hour ago over at the White House, is able to do this, to pull those members together. We feel very optimistic about tax relief, tax cuts. We also think that some of these Democratic
tax reform?
Well, I think it's more than that. The reform is such a Washington word. The Trump pace, the Trump vision for tax cuts and tax relief is the first thing you've seen in 36 years, probably historically ever, that if you can repatriate the $2.8 trillion that's legally parked overseas by American companies who have been punished by having jobs here, having factories and plants here, if you can get that wealth and those jobs back here, if you can give the middle class a break in their marginal rates, get them the child care tax credit that has survived this whole process, double that exemption, so many different areas of relief in the Trump tax vision. But this also has to go through Congress. We feel optimistic that the majority leader can bring together Republicans, but we also want this to be bipartisan. We welcome those senators the 3 Democratic senators, Martha, who refused to sign Chuck Schumer's letter from a month or two ago. And the president will be in one of that senator's states, Joe Donnelly of Indiana, tomorrow. He's already been to North Dakota with Heidi Heitkamp. And Joe Manchin of West Virginia.
So we'll look for him to work across the aisle and meet with these senators and see if he can get a bipartisan deal, since it didn't work with health care?
Yeah, with the president, it should have worked with health care if the Democrats had come over. I think the question of why wasn't health care reform bipartisan is not a question for Republicans. It's a question for Democrats. Why couldn't a single one of them come over and say, the people of my state deserve better than to have so many people still uninsured through Obamacare? On tax reform, we know that so many of them have business owners and small businesses and individual taxpayers and property owners in their states.
They're going to be looking for that 15%, which I know the president still wants. Before I let you go, very quickly, the issue of private emails in the White House. Why was this White House not told absolutely not no to private emails because of the huge issue it was with Hillary Clinton during the campaign?
Well, White House officials have all been briefed on the rules, and those rules are that you use your official account, and if you receive an email, if there's some type of communication on a private email, that you make a copy or you send it to your official email.
And are you confident that those rules have been followed by the people who've been mentioned, Gary Cohn, Jared Kushner, and the like?
We've all been told what the rules are, and we've been briefed in that regard, and that is what we all understand to be the protocol.
All right. Kellyanne, thank you very much.
Thank you.